This is lesson 17 for course 1, the number line, fractions and mixed numbers. So just a quick reminder, a fraction is a fraction of a number or a piece of a number. It looks something like this. That is a fraction. Has a numerator and a denominator. A mixed number has a whole number and a fraction. That is a mixed number. So the mixed number has a whole number and a fraction. A fraction is just a fraction. All right, so when we're looking at number line and fractions and mixed numbers, we're looking at something like this. So this is my 0. I'll zoom in a little bit. So this is my 0. This is my 1. This is my whole number, okay? Halfway to 1 is half. Then I get to 1. Then I get to 1.5, halfway between 1 and 2. Here's my mixed number, okay? The other way to write this would be 1.5. Okay, that's also 1.5. The 0.5 is your half. Okay, so it's 1.5 or 1.5 if you're writing it in decimals, but we are not today. We're just doing the fraction. So half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. Okay, that is number lines. Now, if we're looking at integers, we're also looking at negative numbers. So we're looking at -1, -1.5, -2, -2.5, -3, -3.5, so on and so forth. Okay, if you are not quite yet at the whole number, then you have a fraction and a whole number, or just a fraction if you haven't reached a whole number yet. So it's just make sure you're looking at where on the number line it is hitting. If you have something here, it is not at 1, it is not at 2, it is at 1.5 because it is halfway between 1 and 2. So you need to show the whole number and the fraction. If you had it here, you would be looking at half because it is not yet at 1. So it's just half. Okay, this is whole numbers and mixed numbers on a number line. Now, you might also look at them in this way. If you have a question like this, your first job is 2 things. 1, have I passed a whole number? Okay, I have passed, here's my dot, I've passed 1, I've passed 2, I haven't yet gotten to 3. So I need to write 2. 2 is my whole number. I haven't gotten to 3 yet, which means I'm going to have a fraction. I need to find out what my fraction is. Now remember, if I was drawing, let's say I'm drawing half, okay? Your half is, I am looking at one piece of 2, okay? That's what the fraction says. I am looking at one piece of 2 pieces. There's 2 pieces, I'm looking at one of them. So for this, we need to figure out how many pieces we have altogether. We're only looking between 2 and 3. So we need to figure out how many pieces. And I can do that by counting. I have 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece. Oh, okay, I know I'm going past 3 pieces. So I'm looking at 3 pieces. Because again, this is the 1, so 2 to this bit. 2, next bit, 3, next bit. Okay, now I need to know how many pieces I have altogether. 4, 5, until I get to 3. So I have 3/5. So for this one, I would say I have 2 3/5 for A. Now, this counting should be done every single time one of these pops up because you never know what is going to be in the middle. It could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 10. You don't know. So you need to count your spaces every single time. Remember, your numerator is how many spaces you have passed. Your denominator, so this one, is how many spaces you have all together. Okay, this is all together. This is looking at, or for our purposes, past. Okay, remember those for the fractions. Other than that, that's what it is. What whole number have you passed, if you have passed a whole number, and how many pieces do you have in between the 2 whole numbers to be able to say how many pieces altogether and how many pieces you've passed. That is looking at fractions and whole numbers on a number line. Now, the other place you might see this, where you're going to be using it, is on an inch ruler. So this is an inch ruler, and we will zoom in so that you can see it better. Okay, so for an inch ruler, what you're looking at is you're looking at all these little things in between. So just like we did with the last one, the first thing we need to do is count how many we have in between. So this is my whole number, this is my whole number. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 to get to 2. Okay, so I have 16 spaces all together. Okay, now if I was here on an inch ruler, I have passed the 1, so I would have 1, okay, and then I need to figure out my fraction. Now there's a couple ways I can do this. I can either, knowing I have 16 places, and there will be 16 now between all of them, knowing I have 16 places, I can say, well, let's count how many I've passed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it'd be 8/16. I can do it that way. Or I can know 8/16 is half. 8 is half of 16. So I could, instead of writing 8/16, write a half. Okay, so depending on what you're looking at in your inch ruler can tell you what you are looking at for the rest of it. Okay, so again, let's look at 2 to 3 this time. Okay, there's still 16 things in there. I'm going to erase all of these. So there's still 16 places. Okay, so these tiny lines here, those are what you call 16ths. The medium lines, okay, are your 8ths, because if you notice, there's one of them for every 2/16. So they would be half of 16. This is your quarters. That's the next longest line up, is your quarters. Your longest line in between is your half. Okay? So again, when you're doing 16ths on an inch ruler, you have some options. You can do everything with a denominator of 16. Okay, now if a question asks you for quarters, you will have to convert that then into quarters, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Or you can memorize what every line is. So this is a half, these are quarters. If you notice 3, half, 3.5, 4, the quarters are the line in between half and your next whole numbers, because this would then make 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are your quarters right here. This one and this one are your quarters. Okay, your next smallest line are your 8ths. Your next smallest line are your 16ths. Okay, so your ittiest bittiest line is 16ths. As you go up, they get less. So 16ths, 8ths, quarters, halves. So if you choose to do everything in 16ths and then need to convert it to smaller to be able to get a smaller number, I will show you how to do that. So let's zoom back out. Okay, so if you have, let's say you've done 4/16, okay? That's what you figured out. It was 1 4/16 inches. And it's asked you to put this into quarters, okay? How you do that is you leave the whole number alone. The whole number just stays 1. But you take the fraction and you're going to put it into what's called lowest terms. Now, we'll go over this in much more detail later on. I'm just going to give you a quick lowdown on what lowest terms is. Lowest terms is turning the fraction into the smallest equivalent. So remember, equivalent means an equal. So it's the same fraction, just different numbers. Okay, so how we do that is we look at a number that would divide both 4 and 6 that is bigger than 1. Or 4 and 16, sorry, that is bigger than 1. okay? So I can divide 4. Biggest number I could divide it by would be 2. I could divide both by, but you know what? I can divide both 4 and 16 by 4. Whatever I do to the top, I must do to the bottom. Okay, that's a rule for fractions like this. Anything you do to the top, you must do to the bottom. So if I'm dividing both by 4, 4 divided by 4 is 1. 16 divided by 4 is 4. I now have 1 1/4. Okay, this is one way, if you're going to do it all in 16ths, this is one way to turn it into lowest terms. Now this is only if it's asked you specifically to put it into halves or quarters or eighths. Okay, if it's just telling you to do it in 16ths, or it doesn't matter, just leave it in the 16ths. Okay, but you can do it, as I said, 2 ways. You can do it in 16ths and convert it over if they're asking for a smaller fraction, or you can memorize what every line is. Smallest line are 16ths, bigger lines are eighths, and the biggest lines next are quarters, and the biggest line that isn't a whole number is half. So that is the number line, fractions and mixed numbers, including inches on an inch ruler.